Welcome to The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network. My name is Jamira Burley, and I'm here with my brilliant co-host, Brea Baker. Today's episode feels especially important. It's May, which means it's Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and we're diving into the beauty, complexity of Black and Asian solidarity.
Yes, yes, yes. And pop culture has given us a lot to talk about this month. We have Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan's film Sinners, which we've talked about on episodes before, but we're going to dig into deeper. It is absolutely crushing the box office and turning heads. Set in Jim Crow era Mississippi, it tells this gripping story of Black and Asian characters surviving and resisting together. It's genre breaking, but more than that, it's myth breaking. And because it reminds us that solidarity is not new, we're just really grateful that he didn't overlook those narratives.
And while Sinners were lighting up the screen, another big cultural moment was taking place at the Met Gala. You had the first time in Met Gala history hosted by two Black African Americans for the first time, as well as the theme itself was Black Danny. And you had also one of the biggest Southeast Asian movie stars attend, which was Shah Khan, who was invited by those co-chairs. And a huge moment, right? But it also became very complicated online, which should have been a celebration of Southeast Asia excellence, as well as turned into a vehicle to be anti-Black towards many of the artists who attended and who interviewed him throughout the night.
Yeah, it's so weird, again, that this happened on a night that was supposed to celebrate us. But people were comparing Black Met attendees to Shah Rukh, calling Black fashion tacky or gaudy while praising his look as classy and elegant. It was very racialized, very coded, not subtle at all. And it's a reminder that just because a marginalized person enters a space doesn't mean the space becomes liberatory. Sometimes it becomes another battleground.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. It was really disgusting seeing the vast majority of those comments online, because the moment that we are talking about today, the real solidarity, what that looks like, requires all of us to recognize that we're all victims of the same oppressive systems. And if anything, we should be showing up in solidarity with each other and questioning our own internal racism and how that shows in the work we do, the things that we say, and how we interact with other cultures.
Yep. Say that, say that, say that. But yeah, let's dig into some headlines and then we'll dig even deeper into exactly what you just talked about, what real solidarity takes. But yeah, so speaking of Black excellence, Black artistry, Black cultural moments, last week's episode was all about Black revolutionary art, Beyonce and Cowboy Carter. This week, Trump is talking about he's investigating Beyonce and Bruce Springsteen and a few other major artists for their endorsements of Kamala Harris and their participation in rallies and concerts in her benefit. This is something that's been happening for, celebrity surrogacy is not new. Yep. He has used celebrity surrogates. Mm-hmm. He had Amber Rose and Kid Rock and all these other people singing his praises from stages, but now he wants an investigation into Beyonce. I can't.
I mean, it's a prime example that he cannot take being disliked. He's like the schoolhouse bully that doesn't realize or doesn't understand why no one wants to sit with him at lunchtime. You're literally destroying the country, if not the world. And you're wondering why the Beyonce, Bruce Springsteen doesn't want to sit at your table. And also, he hasn't claimed that they've broken any law. So what is the purpose of the investigation if not to weaponize the police against these artists?
Right. But that's the thing about Trump. He just says things on social media, corrupt, illegal, and just hopes that his loudness and his abrasiveness will actually stick. But there were no laws broken. And again, this is coming from the Freedom of Speech Party. So I'm real confused right now why he is concerned about people using their voices for issues that matter to them when he loves to do the same.
Also, I am not sure he is ready for the beehive to come after him. So please leave Beyonce alone. Please.
No, I'm actually keep doing it because I don't think he has any real claim, but this is only going to ignite a global fan base who has nothing but time to rip him apart.
Exactly. So what a time. So yeah. I'm ready. I'm ready for Beyonce fandom to really show him what it means to reevaluate his life. You gather a group of Black women together and try to question them in a way that is clearly meant to intimidate them. Yeah, we'll see what happens. In other headlines, you also have the Trump budget proposal cuts aim to cut nearly $163 billion from the federal budget, which I should remind everyone that all of this is happening while also the federal government wants to increase the defense budget by nearly $119 billion to take it finally to $1 trillion, which, why? We have the largest military in the world. We surpass all of our allies and military forces. We have over 100 military bases around the world in other people's countries. And so I'm trying to understand the need to continue to give millions and billions of dollars to the Defense Department, which can never pass an audit anytime, while at the same time trying to cut some of our most basic social services like Medicaid and Medicare.
It's exactly what Tupac said. And to paraphrase it, they got money for war, but they can't feed the poor. To paraphrase that, they got money for war, but they can't give us healthcare. Like, come on now. And again, as you said, we have plenty of money going into that military already. They don't need any more. It's going to buy more planes.
Mm-hmm. And also to remind everyone that two things has happened over the last few months. One, the cutting of social services, right? Things that we need to oil and keep our communities running. Not actual oil, but greasing the pipes to keep our communities running. But then two, we've decreased foreign aid. Those two things have actually shown to are more likely to keep our communities safe and our relationships abroad safe when we are actually contributing to the development and safety and security of other places while also investing in our own people. That is more likely to stop wars and stop crime.
I wonder if safety is even a priority for them.
It's intimidation. Yeah, it's absolutely intimidation. It's always been about intimidation. It's always been about bullying the rest of the world. And now the rose-colored glasses are off and the foreign aid is taken away. So no one now feels the need to sugarcoat how they really feel about the U.S.
Yeah. God, these times are going to say. Honestly, before I go into my headline, let's continue with your Trump bullshit because then we can end on a high note. And I just want to.
That's a good idea. So the next one, the next headline, unfortunately, is the fact that the Trump has turned civil rights upside down in one of the biggest rollbacks since Reconstruction. Mind you, this is the man who continues to say that he is a believer and a fighter for Black history. He is a supporter of Black history. But in the White House, the Faith Office, Paula Wright sings as she stands next to President Donald Trump. Because imagine Barack Obama having a random church leader within the Rose Garden. But yeah, no, he is, trying to roll back the history of anti-woke. He is continuing to facilitate policies and practices that continues to attack African Americans, the legacy, the life, and the laws that are protecting our right to exist within this country, such as the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1957. And so be prepared for the continuous kind of attack against our rights as he looks for ways to antagonize African Americans, because I think what he wants to do is antagonize us so much that we start to protest so that he can call martial law. That's my conspiracy theory of the week.
Not even a conspiracy theory. I think you're so spot on for that. And the frustrating thing about it is he's not he's trying to antagonize us, but programs that Black people have developed benefit larger society. Like he's trying to cut Head Start programs, which are supporting all young people and families. It's just so mind-blowing that in order to shoot us in the foot, he's also willing to cut off his own and the people who voted for him too, because those poor white people depend on early childhood education that they don't have to pay out of pocket as well. And at a time when between tariffs and recalls and all this other stuff, the cost of living is going up. He's not making good on any of the promises that he made when he was running for office, except for being a vehement racist. And it's just like...
Yeah, and I need people outside of the Black community to realize that this is an attack against you. The Civil Rights Act of 1957 was the landmark act that opened the door for so many other communities to finally get rights, to be elevated to a full citizenship, for folks to be able to come to the United States that were not white European-centric individuals, right? This is so much more than just an attack against Black people. Because if you harm and abuse those who are the most vulnerable within our society, you start to eliminate the very benchmarks or barriers that were created to uplift them and protect them against authoritarianism that we are seeing from the Trump administration. It's Frustrating. It's so
No,
frustrating.
literally, like punch a wall, like, yeah.
Punch a
It's
wall.
really
You see so many institutions like compliant in advance. What are you doing?
right. Right. Exactly. People who don't have to comply in advance. For-profit private corporations that do not depend on federal dollars are
Yep.
complying in advance. And it is so mind-blowing because if they're not going to make a stand, it can't be the federal agencies. They're being gutted. People are being fired. People are losing funding. Like, this is the time to try and be a hero.
No, they want us individual people to put our bodies and lives on the line because they are refusing to use the power and privileges that they have access to push back and fight back. They want us to sacrifice ourselves for their own safety, right? And that's BS.
No, not going to happen.
Yeah,
well,
please give me some.
No, literally. Good news, positive news. Sinners has hit the 300 million mark. This movie has been out for, I believe, over a month now. It came out Easter weekend. So yeah, it's been out for about a month or just a little over a month and is not really slowing down the way that people are used to seeing movies slow down. I think it went back to number one in the box office. It hit the $300 million mark, making it one of the top 10 grossing horror movies of all time, which is something that it's music to my ears. I love to see it because it's such a great story. And it really is a story that we need to be hearing right now. It's a story of cultural appropriation. It's a story about power and access and Black storytelling. And what is so radical and beautiful about it and how it inspires other people. And as we'll get into later, it's also this really beautiful story and cautionary tale about solidarity and what we have in common and what it takes to build solidarity and sustain those relationships. But I love to see Black people win. I'm rooting for everybody Black, as Issa Rae said. And I just love this for Ryan Coogler, especially because he negotiated a really amazing deal. So he's getting a lot of these dollars that are coming in.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've been lucky enough to see the movie now 3 times. The first time I saw it was in San Francisco, and the Cooglers came out.
I'm so jealous.
Movie that was like chef's kiss, and everyone gave them a standing ovation. It's like so good, and every time I watch it, I see and realize something else within the film and the complexity of it all. Like, it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, but I think it's an opportunity for everyone to learn something. I still think my favorite part of the film was probably the first few minutes when the Native Americans showed up and then left immediately. Okay.
I ain't with y'all. Bye. I warned you. Do what you must.
Exactly. So if you have not seen the film, I highly encourage you to see it. It is phenomenal. And at the very least, it will force you to Google something, to ask questions, to analyze, and to be in community with other folks who are, really starting to see how many patterns that movie outlined for us as we continue to see dismantling of our rights here in the United States. So very, very, very great film. So with that being said, we're going to take a quick break. And just to remind folks who are just tuning in, you are watching On the Other Side of Change and only on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
We begin tonight with the people who are really running the country right now.
Now, Trump is often wrong and misleading about a lot of things, but especially about history.
Donald Trump falling in line with President Elon Musk.
In the wake of the unsettling news that MSNBC has canceled Joy Ann Reid's primetime show, The Readout, Roland Martin and the Black Star Network would like to extend an invitation to all of the fans of Joy Ann Reid's MSNBC show to join us every night to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming on the Black Star Network for news, discussion of the issues that matter to you, and the latest updates on the twice impeached, criminally convicted felon-in-chief Donald Trump and his unprecedented assault on democracy, as well as co-president Elon Musk's takeover of the federal government. The Black Star Network stands with Joy Ann Reid and all folks who understand the power of Black voices in media. We must come together and never forget that information is power. Be sure to watch Roland Martin Unfiltered weeknights, 6 p.m. Eastern at youtube.com/Roland S. Martin or download the Black Star Network app.
welcome back to The Other Side of Change. We're going to get into this conversation of what Black and Asian solidarity really means. Because even in the existence of AAPI Heritage Month, it is rooted in cross-racial organizing. Asian American student movements in the 60s and 70s were deeply inspired by the Black Power and anti-war activism led by Black students. That eventually led to the creation of Asian Pacific Heritage Week in 1977, and later the full month that we now celebrate in May.
Yeah, and another example is with Angela Davis talks about how Black movements for liberation often laid the groundwork for others to follow. As she said, when Black women win victories, it is a boost for virtually every segment of society. That's the kind of vision, for me, indicates real solidarity.
Yeah, completely agreed. And we've seen the solidarity throughout history between our groups. The Black Panthers were reading Mao. Muhammad Ali was rejected by mainstream America for refusing to serve in Vietnam. Malcolm X stood alongside Japanese American activist Yuri Kochiyama. On college campuses, Black student unions laid the blueprint for Asian and Latino organizing. Martin Luther King was learning from Gandhi. So like our communities have always been able to learn from each other, work with each other, and recognize that together we have so much more power.
Yeah, because our enemies are common, right? Our oppressors are the same. And let's be honest, solidarity hasn't always been easy. The model minority myth created harmful wedges between our communities. Asian immigrants were often placed in over-policed Black neighborhoods, creating a cultural clash and distrust. Meanwhile, white supremacy continues to benefit from that violence and that division.
Yeah, it's a classic, keep people separate so that they don't understand how much power they have together. And seeding in that disunity, those tensions really came to a head during the 1992 LA uprisings. A 15-year-old Black girl was murdered by a Korean shop owner, and our communities were pushed into this open conflict, which we especially saw between Black people and East Asian migrants. So it's a real challenge, and those wounds still haven't fully healed. There's a lot of distrust and speculation and I'm wary of you that happens on both sides.
Yeah, and that makes one of the reasons why Sinners is such a powerful text and film. It asks us to imagine a different past, one where communities were already working together, because truth is we just weren't taught that. And I think that's one thing we constantly have to remind ourselves. History books are often written by those who win wars, right? And if we have never won the war, right, because we're still constantly trying to fight the battles in between, the history books doesn't always reflect the truth. They're constantly telling us lies about ourselves and lies about each other, which prevent us creating those levels of solidarity that really outlast the tensions that oftentimes develop by much of the anti-Black rhetoric.
Yeah. And again, that's why I loved Sinners. It really showed that Black and Asian people existing and thriving and loving and fighting side by side is not some new 21st century phenomenon. It's always been happening. And actually, it was so cool to go down the rabbit hole and really learn more about the presence of Asian Americans in the South, in the Delta, as a result of seeing it. So, I mean, these are kind of spoilers, but if you haven't seen Sinners by now, that's on you. So I just loved the way that project really demonstrated, without it feeling like tokenism, that we have been here, we have been side by side. And yes, there are hurdles, and yes, there are barriers, but we can overcome those. And there's so much more on the other side of our solidarity, because as Jamira said, if our oppressors are common, then our tactics against the oppressors, our fighting against them has to also be really united.
Yeah, and it reminds me of, Ali, right? Like one of the reasons why he did not want to fight in the Vietnam War, because he understood that to go and fight some group of people on a foreign land who are also suffering by the same oppressors, right, was actually contributing to his own oppression. Like it would not benefit him to go and harm Asians in another country for the benefit of the U.S. imperial, system. Project. And so it's a reminder that there are folks who continue to speak up and draw those correlations and highlight where the solidarity needs to happen. Also where it has already happened throughout history. And so like, how do we take the lessons of the past and use them as examples for how we can implement that same kind of love, light, and community building that sits at the intersection of all of our lives?
Yes, because that is what we need more than ever right now. What we don't need is people from marginalized communities picking each other apart, leaning into anti-Blackness and colorism and racism and thinking that it will give them any sort of leg up, because it does not. It is a lie. Assimilation is a dangled carrot to force people into behaviors that are not going to benefit them. And so that's what we saw when this incredible movie star is coming to the Met Gala, excited to participate in this celebration of Black culture, and you have social media users who are turning that moment into an opportunity to attack Black artists. It's a reminder that representation can and still be used to uphold anti-Blackness unless we are actively fighting against it. We have to be so vigilant of the ways that we are being pitted against one another and say that that's not what I'm here to do. So I'm really excited for today's guest. We're going to have such an important conversation with her, and it's going to be really beautiful. So we're going to take a break right now. You are watching The Other Side of Change, only on the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to The Change, only on the Black Star Network. I am so excited to invite our next guest up. Joining us now is Malavika Kannan, a brilliant Tamil American writer, cultural critic, and organizer who explores solidarity, storytelling, and the politics of identity. Her self-described villain origin story is that as a teenager in Florida, growing up amid a crisis of racialized gun violence, she organized with March for Our Lives, Giffords, and the Women's March, which is where we got to meet her, taking part in the largest American youth protest since the Vietnam War. Her debut YA novel, All the Yellow Suns, which is incredible and you all should read it, is a queer coming of rage story about activism and identity set in Florida, drawing from these experiences. She also has an incredible book coming out in 2026 called Unprecedented Times, which I can't wait to dig into. Malavika has been featured by 17 Magazine and Good Morning America, and she just graduated from Stanford University last year in 2024. Welcome to The Other Side of Change.
Thank you both so much for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. Yeah, I've been a fan for a long time, and I'm happy that like social media is one of those places that enables for you to follow some of your fans and stay up to date on all the amazing work that they do. And we're excited to have you on here and to really draw those, bring that reality together on screen for folks to learn more about you, but also the amazing work that you do. You know, you've spoken about identity as both a bridge and a battleground. How have your experience as a South Asian woman navigating anti-Blackness, colorism, and casteism, patriarchy shaped the way you show up in post and cross-racial movements?
Yeah, I think something I think about all the time with South Asian Americans specifically is that we are literally making it up in real time, like how it is that we want to engage with America. like for folks like me who are first generation American, like we don't necessarily have strong historical roots in this country, but what we do have is like a sense of like a lot of changes happening around us and a very distinct choice of how we want to align ourselves. Like as of late, we've seen South Asian Americans, but also generally non-Black people of color becoming like a really important part of like the conservative voting bloc. Like we see like massive numbers of like Asian Americans, like Latino Americans voting for Trump. We see a lot of high-ranking South Asian Americans even within the Trump administration. And on the other hand, we see like South Asians who are like trying to like consciously like, align our movements for justice with that for Black lives. There has been, as y'all pointed out in your introduction, a very long history of cross-pollination between movements against American racism and larger Western colonialism abroad. And I obviously have chosen to try to align myself in broader solidarity movements. But I can see that that is a choice that's being made in real time by like my friends, the people around me, and other people who are also coming up in like the 21st century America.
Yeah, that's such a real point. And I really appreciate you also like mentioning in particular with your experience as a South Asian woman and how that varies, because I think a lot of our continents, Africa, Asia, even like South America, get treated like monoliths, and they are so expansive, and that could be further from the truth. And so a South Asian experience could be so much different from a East Asian experience, so much different from a Pacific Islander experience. And I think that's something that definitely shows up in solidarity building, because even when we talk about the minority, the minority myth, or like the model minority myth, excuse me, like that's not something that would affect a browner person from the Asian community or like a Filipino, it just shapes us all very, very differently. And so anyway, long story short, I say all that to say that during the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a lot of movements around both anti-Black policing, but also around anti-Asian hate. And these movements are rising up simultaneously, but our communities were still being pitted against each other, even though many of us are affected by the same systems, like over-policing, like racism, like exclusion from spaces. And so there was this like constant pitting against one another. How did that moment shift or affirm your understanding of solidarity and the work that still needs to be done to understand the expansiveness of both of our communities and the opportunities in coming together?
Yeah, so I was like around 20 when like Stop Asian Hate came up. So I was definitely like a very formative part of my coming of consciousness as an Asian American person, which is not actually something that is like my primary identifier. Like I think I have been someone who kind of learned about Asian Americanness and had to sort of choose to align myself even with other Asian Americans the same way I had to choose to align myself with Black Americans. Like I think that nothing about these alliances is like necessarily natural, except for the fact that we all are people who are trying to stay safe and can reach the conclusion that our safety is best achieved together. But I remember I was living in the Bay Area at that time. I had just started working at San Francisco Chronicle as their first like race and equity intern. And that was like my first assignment, was like to go into Chinatown, like in the pouring rain, like not speaking Chinese, to talk to a community that was like very actively grieving, and to see the kind of like safety measures that they were trying to take place. And in some ways, a lot of what was happening with like a community like safety task force almost sounded like woke in a way, like it's community safety, it's without the police. But then on the other hand, you saw a lot of these community safety task forces like harassing homeless people. There was like this very like slippery and very awkward and hard to describe anti-Blackness that was happening within the movement, which again, like I felt like an outsider looking in on. But at the same time, we saw a lot of like really exciting work being done, like for Black Asian solidarity in the Bay Area, like abolitionist Asian Americans who were pointing out that, we all have the same issue, which is trying to be safe, but there are other ways with which we can achieve that safety that doesn't require reliance on the police, that doesn't require us, to carry guns or to like be intimidating one another. So I think the Stop Asian Hate movement to me was very interesting because for a lot of us who are first generation American, it was the first time we'd had to have this like very like awkward and complex conversation about who we align ourselves with, how we make solidarity. And it went in a lot of ways. Like for some people like me, abolition became the answer I arrived at. Some people, it went in a really corny direction, like Stop Asian Hate almost became like a sort of competing hashtag to Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
There was like a weird sort of corporatization of it where like a lot of like big Asian American like startups, I guess, came up out of that. And there was a push for representation and inclusion on like the consumer side of things, the same way we maybe saw with Black Lives Matter, that a lot of the changes that came up after that were more like cosmetic or like about better marketing to consumers or something.
Mhm.
So I think in some ways, like I saw it following that trajectory while also maybe like wrestling with it. And I think it's like still a work in progress that like Asian Americans who are coming up right now in America for the first time are like actively trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jamira.
No, I was just going to say that makes sense, right? Like unfortunately, we know racism is very much a social construct, as is race. And the idea that, especially if you're first generation or even, just immigrated to the US, you are navigating an unknown world in which isn't reflective of a place that most of the people who look like you, right? And so I can definitely understand like that struggle of trying to I find your own identity in such a broad community while also navigating very complex spaces in the US that feels like a what is it called? Like a landmine, right? You don't know where you're stepping. You don't know the history. You don't know the complexity behind it, especially how it may reflect in policy versus practice. So yeah, I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. And the other thing that was very interesting was what you brought up about the competing moments. I remember having a white friend kind of do this. There's a white woman that I knew who was like, if you went to a Black Lives Matter protest, you better be going to this. And I was like, why are you gonna do that? Like, just tell people to show up to the protest that you're encouraging them to go to. Because the reality is there's a lot of people who went to Black Lives Matter protests who did it to be seen and have not shown up for that movement since. And so why put those movements against one another as if, so many more people came out for this than are willing to come out for that. And it's like, okay, don't compare George Floyd to, you don't need to do that, And I just think that instead of using it as an opportunity for building awareness of commonality and the fact that there were also Asian Americans being harmed by police, talking about like the legacy of Japanese internment and how that shaped a lot of like, especially East Asian Americans' identity. Like it was such a weird competitive thing. And then, yeah, of course, the corporatism. So everything you just said is so spot on.
Reminder that, people just talk too much and just say the weirdest things unnecessarily, right? Like some of this conflict is so unnecessary. But, I think what's come to light over the last few weeks is that there's still so much work to be done. As you all know, the Met Gala happened, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, and Shah Rukh Khan, who's one of the biggest artists out of Bollywood. And if you, for the first time, are hearing the word Bollywood, let me just say that Hollywood is not the only place where movies are made. There's Bollywood and there's Nollywood, which is Bollywood happens in India, Nollywood happens in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so there are movies and stars outside of the United States ecosystem that exists with much larger audiences. And so Shah Rukh Khan, who's one of the biggest Bollywood artists, appeared at the Met Gala for the first time in history, and which should have been a very celebratory moment of communities coming together, showing solidarity, revealed that there is still so much intercommunal dynamics and limits to that representation. And so I'm curious for you, how do you navigate that as you see much of your community still struggling to show up in a way that doesn't replicate the same harms and oppressive systems that they saw in their own communities here in the US?
Yeah, so I know we were talking a little bit about the Met Gala discourse earlier. I think something that I think about a lot is I try to not take too much stock in what is happening in celebrity discourse. Like, I just don't think it really represents a lot of us. And it's something that I wished even with South Asian creators is that we've had a lot of big moments of like online discourse around fashion, whether that's cultural appropriation or this feeling of being like slept on in the Western gaze and like not having our celebrities recognized, which in many cases like can lead to instances of anti-Blackness, as he pointed out. And I guess like my wish is that the South Asian diaspora, we would talk about more important things, like even with regards to fashion, like so many of the fashion products that we're consuming are made in the global South, are made in countries like Bangladesh, are made by South Asian women and femmes who are being paid like cents on the dollar. So I think I just feel a little embarrassed when I see like our online discourse being used to make like these statements that veer into anti-Blackness instead of like confronting maybe something more substantial.
Yeah, because there's a lot of issues that we can draw a lot of correlations and similarities to, right? That we know would have been a moment to uplift those issues in a way that actually would have taught people more about what is actually happening in the global South versus almost like push people away from learning or wanting to engage in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think this brings us to storytelling. And you're such a brilliant storyteller and writer. And I love following you on social media because your commentary is so spot on and you're constantly just like pushing
Very cheeky on TikTok. She's very cheeky.
I love it, okay? Even on Instagram stories, I'd be like, put that on the grid, okay? But no, for real, I think there's a lot of we are thinking in our heads, and you are pushing us to be more critical and a little less like, yeah, just don't go for the cheap conversation. Like what is actually at the core of what we want in this world? And so I love the way that you do that. And do you think that art and storytelling have more power than policy when it comes to building intercommunal understanding, or what is that role of art and storytelling in helping us to have these deeper conversations in ways that, like, you know, you can't legislate and force people to have these conversations, but you can inspire and motivate people to have them?
Yeah, I think something I think a lot about when it comes to South Asian identity is, like I said, we're figuring it out in real time. Like, there is a very long history of Asian Americans in this country that, for example, fields like Asian American studies have made a point to center. For example, like there were South Asian Americans like the Gather Party that were doing anti-colonial agitating in the 20th century in San Francisco. Like, Asian Americans have been in this country for so long. But for a lot of us who are the product of post-1965 immigration policies, like my parents who came in the 90s, you know, like it almost feels like we're in American puberty, like we are figuring out what it means to relate to America, to be politically active. And I think that storytelling helps us a lot with like imagining what are different ways of existing in this country and understanding that the struggles that we have had are not unique to learn from the past. I think about the open quote all the time, like you think your pain and heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world, but then you read. And I think that when we have other options to understand what does it mean to make change in this country, we're less likely to go down these corny paths that we were describing, whether that's like, you know, like being obsessed with celebrity drama, like that has anything to do with us, or like going this like very like weird, like corporate representation route, or like trying to sort of like copy Black people. Like I see that as like an impulse that comes up a lot often in Asian American spaces, that when you're trying to assert yourself in America, like you either kind of go this like extremely like so-called whitewashed route, or you go and you kind of try to like copy Black people, both of which can have like pretty awkward results. So I think that and I try to have a lot of grace for people too figuring this out in real time. Like I've had a conversation with my mom recently, like I said, who came in the 90s, and I was like when you came to America, like you moved here at 22, like pretty soon you started raising a family in the South. Like did you think that through? Like did you know what about racism, for example? And she like didn't. She was like, yeah, like I knew that there was slavery. Like, she maybe knew MLK, but like that was it. But then she also told me that when she came to America, even though my mom is totally fluent in English, like she wasn't that tapped into American English. And she said that her worst fear was that she would be in an elevator with a white person and have to talk to them. But she described like watching like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as like kind of like where she learned American English, which I think is funny because that's also a very specific American English too. So I guess I think a lot about like storytelling and art offering people different entries into what it means to be American. But then to me also, as I guess progress in my own coming of age journey, both as a person and also as like an American, I think now very often about what it would mean to not center belonging in America, but to think a little bit bigger and more globally. So maybe back to the conversation that we were having about the Met Gala, like we are now living in the global North, which is like crazy. Like we are now consuming like a disproportionate amount of like the world's carbon emissions. Like our taxpayer dollars are currently going to fund atrocities that are happening in Asia. So I think taking a moment to look back now and see how our actions reflect on a global stage, like now that we have made it into the most powerful country in the world, like we are living in the heart of empire, like what do we do to that? Like is our hill to die on gonna be that, you know, we need like more South Asian rom-coms or better fashion or whatever, or is it going to be like taking a look back to see like what can we do with our place on the global stage? What can we do for the most marginalized in this country?
Oh, that's a great point. That is a great point. And how do they do that? What would be your first recommendation on like how to take that first step building solidarity and understanding and learning about the history that is happening here in the US, but more importantly, how that implicates the communities and countries that you love and are reflective of the people that, made you who you are.
Yeah, well, I think that's kind of on us as artists to make that work fun and accessible. Like, I think about the fact that most people like work so much and like all the time, and like they're turning to books and TV to like, and like TikTok and whatever to like power their brains off after like hard days of work. Like, we're in a recession, like it's tough out here. And like, I think that as artists, like it's kind of on us to like create art that I think is like exciting and will like prompt these conversations for people. Like I think about like what kinds of things would like get through to like my friends and like my parents and stuff. And like people do want to read and see themselves in things that like don't feel patronizing, don't feel corny, like don't feel like they're being talked down on. So I think that especially within the world of like Asian American storytelling, like we have no shortage of discourse even within our own community about storytelling that like makes fun of our parents, exploits their trauma, whatever. I think a lot about like the power of like humor too, to like make these conversations easier to have. Like, as much as like there's a temptation to write about immigration as a sob story, I view a lot of like what my parents and I went through as like very funny. Like there's a lot that's like super comedic about even like trying to come of age in like this really weird country, about like being a brown girl like post 9/11, that like I think that could be a way to reach people as well.
That's great.
I love that so much. And this is why I love getting to read your work and to hear the ways that you are kind of pushing other people in that direction. So before we let you go, can you tell us one personal or historical moment that reminds you how and why Black Asian solidarity is not just possible, but necessary?
Ooh, okay. I need to think on that for a sec.
Okay, take a second.
Okay, actually, I have it. That I'm really passionate about, that I was maybe mentioned earlier, is I think a lot about the role of caste in South Asia and the South Asian diaspora, which is like 1,000-year-old system of domination and oppression that has a lot of similarities with the way white supremacy operates in this country. And something that makes me feel really excited is like the cross-pollination that's happened between movements for caste justice in South Asia and the diaspora and movements like for Black lives in America. Like, one of my favorite books of all times, which I recommend to everyone, is Caste by Isabel Wilkerson, who's like a brilliant Black American scholar who draws these parallels between the systems of domination and how we can, I guess, like transform them. And yeah, so I really recommend that book as an example of like really brilliant Black Asian solidarity.
That's a great book. And where can folks learn more information about you? And feel free to drop when that new book is coming out.
Yeah, so I guess folks can follow me on Instagram. It's my name at Malavika.Kannan. And I have a novel, Unprecedented Times, that is a coming of age novel set during the COVID-19 pandemic. It definitely explores a lot of these themes. The summer of 2020 from the perspective of like an Indian immigrant family is like a central plot point. And I'm really excited, I guess, to hear how that lands for people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. And I hope you have a great week.
Love you, Bill.
Thanks.
All right, we're going to go on break.
You're
and we'll
brilliant. Oh, wait, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. No, Malavika is incredible. I'm so glad that we had her on the show. Let's take a break and we'll just be back to close out this incredible episode. You're watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act.
information reminds us that solidarity isn't perfect, but it's powerful, and it's needed more than ever.
Yeah. If you want to dive deeper into everything that we discussed, there are some incredible books out. Unassimilable by Bianca Mabute-Lui, Samurai Among Panthers by Diane Fukino, and Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, which is what Malavika just mentioned. You can also follow her on social media at malavika.kannan, and support groups like AAPI Women Lead and 18 Million Rising, who are doing that work of reminding us we have so much more in common than we have in difference.
Yep. And until next time, keep questioning, keep building, keep showing up. You've been watching The Other Side of Change only on the Black Star Network.